Welcome to the deep dive. You know we love to dig into some interesting stories, but this one today is really something else.
It really is. We're going to try to unpack this whole legal battle, and it's just fascinating how dramatic this whole thing gets.
Right, and to think it all comes down to a collapsed fountain of all things.
That's the centerpiece of the case. But the real intrigue, I think, is that we have not one but two lawsuits.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Two different sides to the same story.
Coming from the same incident, but each one is telling a totally different story.
And that's what makes this a perfect deep dive. You know, we get to go through the actual legal documents.
The excerpts from both lawsuits.
All the filings, all the evidence right here in front of us.
So we're basically like flies on the wall in the courtroom.
Exactly. And as we go through all this, the question we really have to keep in mind is,
how in the world could one event have two such wildly different interpretations?
it's a great question. All right, let's get into it.
Let's set the scene.
Okay, so we're at this big Vietnamese New Year's party.
Hosted by none other than Gerard Williams.
Gerard Williams, big name in the tech world.
Yeah, think the guy who invented the chips that are in your phone right now.
And our other main character in this whole saga is Vinh Hung.
Famous Vietnamese singer.
So you might be thinking, what on earth brings these two totally different worlds together?
Well, it all starts with this unfortunate incident involving a fountain.
Oh, boy.
A grand exit gone wrong.
That's messy.
And then it gets even messier when all the lawyers get involved.
Naturally. Okay, so the party's going on at Gerard's house. Big celebration music food.
They even had a whole stage built for performances.
Really going all out?
Big party atmosphere. But as the night goes on, Vinh Hung decides he wants to make a memorable exit.
Memorable is right. So what happens? He just walks out the door?
Not quite. He climbs onto a fountain in the courtyard.
A fountain?
Yeah, seems like he was going for something dramatic.
Oh, I bet.
But the fountain couldn't hold his weight,
Oh, no.
and the whole thing crumbles. He gets injured. The party kind of comes to a screeching halt.
I can imagine. So what happened next?
Well, that's where things start to get really interesting, because there's video footage of the whole incident.
Oh, wow. So we know exactly what happened.
Yeah, there's no disputing the physical events. But of course, things are never that simple, are they?
Never. What's the catch?
Well, right after it happens, everyone's pretty calm. Vinh Hung goes to the hospital, and Gerard covers the medical bills.
Seems pretty reasonable, right?
You'd think that would be the end of it, but there's this one little detail.
What's that?
In the video, you see this woman named Hong Gok,
Hongok. Okay.
and it looks like she's testing out the fountain right before Vinh Hung climbs on.
Interesting. I wonder if she'll come up again later.
Oh, she definitely will. Now, you might think medical bills paid, everyone's okay, case closed, but a few months later, things take a sharp turn.
Oh, well, what happened?
Vinh Hung files a lawsuit against Gerard.
For what?
Negligence and premises liability.
Premises liability.
Yeah, basically he's saying that Gerard, as the owner of the property, was responsible for making sure that fountain was safe.
Ah, I see.
And this is where the two sides of the story really diverge. Vinh Hung claims that fountain was a total death trap,
Oh, geez.
that he was severely injured, and get this, that his life is completely ruined because of this.
Ruined? Like, how?
Career, emotional well-being, the whole 9 yards. And to compensate for all this ruin, he's asking for a hefty sum of money.
How much are we talking here?
Initially, $15 million.
15 million?
Yeah, though later it gets reduced to $5 million,
Oh, okay.
only to then be increased again to $20 million, with threats of raising it to a whopping $50 million.
That's a lot of money for a fountain.
It is. And some of his claims get a little iffy, like the lawsuit says he's often hesitant to engage in physical activities after the incident.
Really? We'll have to compare that to what he's been up to on social media and all that later.
Oh, yeah, that'll be interesting. But let's hear what Gerard has to say, because his side of the story is quite compelling.
All right, I'm all ears. Let's dive into Gerard's counter-narrative.
All right, so we're about to hear Gerard's side of the story.
And it's a doozy. His response to the lawsuit and his own amended complaint, they really paint a very different picture.
Oh, okay. I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Well, for starters, Gerard's story is like a classic American dream kind of thing. Humble beginnings, hard work, all that jazz.
Yeah, he's a big name in tech now, but where did it all start?
His filings talk about his childhood in the Midwest.
Okay.
And it was far from glamorous, let me tell you. Strong Christian family, no running water, no electricity in the house.
Wow, really?
Yeah, even mentions an outhouse.
An outhouse. That's a far cry from Silicon Valley.
You can say that again. And they even had a cistern well that would run dry in the summer.
Oh, man, that's rough.
Yeah, but it shows you the kind of environment he came from. One that really fostered resilience and resourcefulness.
I could see that. Makes sense that those early experiences would shape his work ethic.
Right. And that work ethic is what propelled him through college, got him into the world of technology. He worked his way up, I'm guessing.
Absolutely. Started at Texas Instruments, then went to ARM, and eventually landed a big role at Apple.
So he's the brains behind the chips in our phones.
He played a key role, for sure. It's a real testament to his talent and dedication.
Yeah, totally different image from what Dan Vinh Hung's lawsuit is suggesting.
Right. And it gets even more interesting because Gerard's personal life also plays into this whole narrative.
So?
We met his wife, Tiffany, who's a Vietnamese artist and singer.
Oh, wow.
And they built a life together, embracing both of their cultural backgrounds.
What's the main takeaway from that?
It really emphasizes his dedication to hard work, family values, and his love for Vietnamese culture.
So this is the same guy being sued by a famous Vietnamese singer.
Isn't that something? And here's the kicker. Gerard didn't just pay Dan Vinh Hung's hospital bills after the incident.
He didn't?
Nope. He continued to sponsor his shows even after the whole fountain debacle.
Really? That's pretty generous considering he was being sued.
It is. And their relationship goes beyond just money. The legal documents show they were actually friends before all this went down.
Oh, wow. So there was a genuine connection there.
Seems like it. They sang duets together. Gerard went to his concerts, even traveled to Vietnam to perform with him. There's even mention of Gerard practicing his Vietnamese pronunciation with Tiffany's family.
Really? That's dedication.
And he would sing at their gatherings, too.
So this paints a very different picture of their relationship than what's presented in the lawsuit.
Exactly. It makes you wonder what happened between that New Year's party and the lawsuit being filed.
I know, right? Huge shift. So what about all that stuff we talked about earlier about Dan Vinh Hung's activities after the incident?
Yes. The whole often hesitant to engage in physical activities claim.
Right.
Remember that. Well, let's just say his social media tells a very different story.
Oh, really? Spill the tea.
There are videos and pictures of him performing dancing, even doing some pretty intense choreography.
No way.
It's all there. And this was all in the months following the fountain incident.
So much for being hesitant, huh?
It seems his career was doing just fine, despite the supposed ruin he claimed.
What about the performance ban? Could that be why he felt his career was ruined?
Yes. Good point.
Mm-hmm.
He did face a temporary ban on performing in Vietnam and abroad.
Okay, so that could be a factor, right?
Here's the thing. That ban had nothing to do with the incident at Gerard's house.
Wait, really? What was it for then?
Believe it or not, it was because of an unauthorized decoration on his performance uniform.
Seriously? A decoration?
Yep. A completely separate issue. But it does cast some doubt on the whole ruined career narrative.
Definitely. So on one hand, we have Dan Vinh Hung claiming his life is over. And on the other hand, we have Gerard, who seems like he was nothing but supportive.
It's a real head-scratcher.
Yeah.
And then there's the public reaction, which throws another wrench into the whole thing.
Oh, yeah. What happened there?
Well, fans were not happy. Let's just say that.
Not happy is an understatement, I bet.
They went after him on social media, accusing him of betrayal, dishonesty, the whole shebang.
Wow, all that for suing someone who had been helping him?
Yep. Some even saw it as unpatriotic, disrespectful to Vietnamese culture.
Really? So it wasn't just about the lawsuit itself?
It became about something much bigger. They felt like he'd violated a cultural code, a sense of honor and respect that's really important in Vietnamese culture.
That's intense. So this whole thing went from a simple accident to a full-blown cultural controversy.
Exactly. It shows you the power of public opinion and how deeply these values run.
I'm honestly surprised this didn't blow up even more.
It's pretty wild.
Yeah.
And there's an even more interesting detail.
What's that?
There was actually an attempt to dismiss the lawsuit, but that attempt was rejected.
Why?
And this is the kicker. It was rejected at the request of the plaintiff's own attorney.
Hold on, Dam. Vinh Hung's wanted the case closed permanently.
It seems that way. It's a really strange twist, don't you think?
It is. Makes you wonder what was going on behind the scenes.
Definitely. We may never know the full story, but it just adds to the whole mystery of this case.
Absolutely. We started with a simple question. How could one event lead to such different legal claims? And the answer, it turns out, is far from simple.
We've got conflicting narratives, cultural nuances, public outrage, and a legal outcome that leaves us with more questions than answers.
It's like peeling an onion with this case. Every layer reveals something new and unexpected.
Exactly. So what do we make of all this? Stay tuned for part 3, where we'll try to unpack it all and leave you with some thought-provoking questions.
All right, so here we are trying to make sense of this whole saga, a collapsed fountain, 2 lawsuits. A whole lot of drama.
It's been quite a ride, hasn't it? We started with what seemed like a simple premises liability case.
Things got complicated fast.
Oh, yeah. Layers upon layers of cultural nuances, personal values, and questions about how we even perceive truth.
Going through all this, it really hit me that this is about way more than just a fountain.
Oh, absolutely.
It's like a glimpse into how easily stories can be twisted and how differently people can see the same event.
And how social media just amplifies everything.
Right. It's like truth gets lost in the noise sometimes.
For sure. So what stands out to you as the biggest takeaway from this whole deep dive?
Honestly, the stark contrast between Gerard and Vinh Hung's perspectives is what really gets me.
Yeah, that's a big one.
On one hand, you have Gerard, this guy who's like the embodiment of the American dream, hard work, giving back, all that.
And then on the other hand, you have Vinh Hung, who's painting this picture of a ruined life.
Even though the evidence seems to suggest otherwise.
It's a real clash of narratives, isn't it? And I wonder if some of that comes down to cultural differences.
Oh, that's an interesting thought. Tell me more.
Well, in some cultures, personal responsibility is huge, right?
Yeah.
Well, in others, the focus might be more on collective accountability.
I see. So maybe those different cultural lenses shaped how they approach this whole thing.
It's definitely possible.
Mm-hmm.
And what about the public's reaction?
Fans.
Right. They were outraged.
Do you think that could be tied to cultural differences too?
I think so. Remember, they weren't just upset about the lawsuit itself.
Right. It was more than that.
It was like he'd broken a deeper code of honor and respect that's super important in Vietnamese culture.
So they saw it as a betrayal on a much larger scale.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then there's that whole weird...
Oh, yeah. Dismissed with prejudice at the request of his own lawyer.
It's like there's a whole other story we're not privy to.
Some behind-the-scenes stuff we'll never know.
Maybe some secret negotiations or cultural pressures that influence the outcome.
It really makes you think. And that's what makes this whole deep dive so fascinating.
Right. It's not always about finding clear-cut answers.
It's about asking the right questions, challenging our assumptions.
And realizing that the truth is often messy and complicated.
Yeah, and that's okay. Sometimes the questions are more important than the answers.
So as we wrap up this episode, we want to hear from you.
What are your thoughts on all this?
What do you think motivated Vinh Hung to file the lawsuit in the first place?
And what about that sudden ending?
Could cultural differences or miscommunication have played a role?
We've given you the evidence, the context, the multiple perspectives.
Now it's your turn to draw your own conclusions.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a wild one, but hopefully it's given you something to think about.
We'll see you next time for another deep dive into the stories that matter.